Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here. So just before Halloween, I decided to do a top 10 list, or what I should say is a top 5 list, but I'm still adding it within the playlist because why not? And the reason why this is a top 5 and not a top 10 like I normally do is that this one was kind of a hard one to do, I'll be honest. And as you can tell, this list is about top 5 of the most evil video game characters. So a part of the reason why I'm only doing 5 is that there's a whole lot of villains out there that are pretty badass and just very all-around evil. And there's also a lot of villains out there that are kind of hard to explain, whether it be like their personalities are really complex, or explaining the reasonings why they're so evil would kind of spoil a lot of things about the game. So I tried to keep it down to games that don't have like a huge emphasis on story, or ones that are just very well known. So unfortunately, I won't be talking about things like The Legend of Heroes, Shadow Hearts, or even the Shin Megami Tensei games, because not only do those games have a big emphasis on story, but they're also not huge names of something like Final Fantasy or Star Wars where, most people knows what the hell those things are. At least, you should know what those things are if you're on my channel. Well anyways, I just had to explain that, so without dilly-dallying, let's continue on with the 5 most evil video game characters that I've ever seen. So for number 5, we have Bison from Street Fighter, or also known as Vega in Japan. So why is Bison so evil is, well, first of all, he's a dictator who really just doesn't give a shit about anyone, and because of that, he can't feel empathy for anyone at all. For an example, he destroyed an entire village which happened to be the same place that Chun-Li was from, and he happened to kill her father, and once Chun-Li ended up meeting him again, she ends up telling Bison about this, and then Bison, all he has to say is that, I can't remember because I do shit like that all the time. So it just shows that not only is he ruthless, but he also just doesn't care about anyone except for himself, who just wants to be power hungry. And lastly I'll mention is that he always takes pleasures within himself when he kills people with his own bare hands, so that's definitely saying something that yes, this guy is fucking evil. And he also happens to be one of my favorite characters to use within the Street Fighter series, so yeah, that's pretty awesome. And as for number 4, we have Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal, although I'm more talking about Twisted Metal Black because that one is much more dark and gritty, and it also happens to be my favorite in the series. So I'm sure it's not hard to see why this guy is so evil. I mean, first of all, he's a clown, and he also happens to be driving an ice cream truck that can transform into a giant robot that shoots missiles. And to top it all off, he happens to be a serial killer. But of course I should mention that his real name is actually not Sweet Tooth, it's actually Needles Kane, which is still a pretty menacing sounding name. But with all that aside, yes, so because he is the serial killer, that means he just kills people at random no matter what. But to make his character even more interesting, especially in the game Twisted Metal Black, he happened to got a curse from a mysterious guy when he was in prison, and that curse has a very unbearable pain even for someone like him. So he ends up getting an invitation from Calypso telling him that he can actually retrieve his curse, so if you clear his story at the ending, Calypso gives him a vial that says that it can clear his curse, but Kane ends up breaking the vial and ends up killing Calypso by cutting his throat. So while even having the chance of clearing out his curse, he still wants to continue what he normally does best, and that's, well, killing random people. So it really just goes to show you that Sweet Tooth will just do anything just to kill anyone. So not only is it creepy, especially with the whole clown thing going on, but it's also pretty damn evil if I say so myself. And as for number 3, we have Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. So yet again, we got another clown character that happens to be very evil. But the big difference is that Sweet Tooth is a much more serious character, where Kefka is one of the characters where he doesn't really take things seriously, but he just knows he's evil and he knows that he's better than everyone. Because this is the kind of character that would hurt people and just laugh about it right in front of their face. Because that's what he does best, is inflicting pain onto others and just laughing about it like a maniac. Very much like the Joker from Batman. And it wouldn't surprise me if they based his character off of him. So yes, Kefka is one that is obsessed with destruction and chaos, and he also happens to be wanting to become a god. And he also toys with Terra for every chance that he gets. So yes, Kefka is pretty damn insane and also pretty damn evil, and he also happens to be my favorite villain within the Final Fantasy series. And as for number 2, we have yourself, as in the player within Tecmo's Deception. Now this is probably the most obscure game that I'm going to be talking about within this video, But yes, this is a game that I talk a lot about on my channel, so I'm not going to go too much into it there. But what you need to know is that your main character, which you can name whatever you want, gets framed for killing the king, and before he gets executed, he ends up being saved by a mysterious power. And you end up finding a castle called Castle of the Damned, and once you take it over by killing the guy that runs the place, your main task is to resurrect the devil, and you do that by harvesting souls. Now, most of the people that are going to invade your castle are trying to kill you, but there are some people that do invade your castle, and they do happen to try and spare your life, but you still have to kill them anyway. So, meaning that there's a lot of innocent people you get to kill. In fact, there's actually even some schoolgirls that end up invading you as well, and yes, that's exactly what I said. And there's even a mission where parents are trying to kill you to try to get an award to save their daughter, but you end up killing them, and then the daughter ends up getting sick and then dies. So, yeah, with that being said, I'm pretty sure your guy is pretty damn evil, whether you like it or not. Hell, even if you pick the ending where you don't resurrect the devil, it still doesn't change the fact that you just killed a whole bunch of people. And a lot of the people that do try and invade you are mostly very scared because of the fact that it's a very haunted looking place, and also the fact that they know that there's a serial murderer in there. So yes, in Tecmo's Deception, you do play as a complete murderer who is also very evil. Even though he was kind of forced to be doing all this shit, it still doesn't change the fact that he is still very much very evil. So now, before we continue on and talk about the #1 spot, let's talk about some honorable mentions here. So we have Wesker from Resident Evil, Nightmare from Soul Calibur, Jack of Blades from Fable, Luca from Sudoku 2. Even though I never played the game, I have read a little bit on him, and from what I've heard from other people, he does sound pretty damn sadistic. And lastly I'll mention is the traitor within Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. And I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious why I'm just calling it the traitor, because if I actually revealed the name, then that would be a huge spoiler. But if you've played the game or watched the anime or whatever the case is, then yes, you know exactly who I'm talking about. So those are some examples of honorable mentions that I'll mention in here. So now, let's talk about the #1 spot. So, the #1 spot happens to belong to Eddie Glueskin from Outlast. To be more specific, he is actually from the add-on game of Outlast, which is called Whistleblower. Man, oh man, where can I begin to talk about this guy? So it's pretty clear that this guy is just completely batshit insane. So this guy has killed many, many, many people. And his whole reasoning behind killing people is that, so he wants to make the perfect family, but how he does about this is that he ends up torturing people, and of course, this is the part where it gets really, really painful, because how he tortures people is that he ends up cutting people's balls off while they're alive. Well, if you think that's bad, well, it actually gets even worse, because he even puts people onto a conveyor belt that happens to have a buzzsaw at the end of it, and the buzzsaw ends up going up their groin. So, yeah, that's pretty fucking painful to imagine. But if you want to go into the even more disturbing route is what he does with the dead bodies. So he ends up cutting off their heads and replacing them with a woman's head, and he also takes like the woman's breast and sews them on to like where the guy's like chest's area is. And he even cuts open the groin area to make it look like a baby is coming out, because, like I said, the perfect family, quote unquote. So don't you think that's a little bit fucked? So this guy is pretty much a mixture between Jeffrey Dahmer and Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. So I think with all the things that I've said about this guy is easily the most evil character I've ever seen in a video game, ever. Like, I don't even know how someone else can even top something like this off. So yeah, I think this guy is not only the most evil, but also the most crazy, but at the same time, he's also the most creepy. Now, I have done a video on creepy characters within video games, but the thing was, I made that video about like 2 or 3 years ago or some shit. So this game was not even out at the time, and not only that, but yes, I do think this guy is even more creepy than CFW Trick from the Neptunia games. Of course, they're both creepy in many different ways, but this guy is just too obsessed with the testicular area. It's just fucking disturbing. In fact, he even makes some of the other guys I mentioned on this list look like fucking gods. So anyways, I think you all get the point. Eddie Glueskin is easily the most evil character I've ever seen, ever. So that's my top 5 most evil characters within video games, so what are some other characters that I didn't mention that you think are pretty damn evil and sadistic? Or maybe you might be able to find a character that is even more disturbing than my #1. And of course, I hope everyone else is having a great time in October and enjoying some Halloween and some horror movies and all that type of good shit. So, that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.